It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for November 3rd, 2022. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, it turns out it wasn't Parasite Eve at all, not even a little bit. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Jan Ochoa, everybody. Jan, how are you doing? That's right. I got the frozen powers. Yes, I've got many siblings who have been struck by my powers. They needed to warm their hearts, and you know, it got messy. It got messy. But yes, I have those frozen. Jan is muted. All right, let's start. No, he's good now. Jan, I have the Elsa powers you were saying.
Yes, wow, I had no idea. I mean, I knew I was working with a celebrity, but dang.
Yeah, that's right. I just blast that on my hands on straight into OBS. It's pretty powerful stuff, if I say so myself. Here, you want to see it again? Here we go. Boom!
Whoa!
Yeah, freezing them up. That's cool.
Man, let it go.
Yeah. So yeah, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I had to intimately explain. Louder than it was. I had to intimately explain to a judge yesterday the basis of my job to convince him, like, yo, dog, I can't serve on a jury for like 2 months because no. And then he was like, oh wow, that's a very interesting job you have there. Maybe I'll tune in. I'm like, you probably can't during actual court proceedings, but what's up?
Hey, but if you do, hello. What's up,
hi,
Judge? Sup, Judge?
I probably can't say his name, but like, hi, Judge.
Yeah, sup, Judge. I mean, it's his first name. We can just use Judge as his first name.
Yeah.
That is very. Now I know that can work. I'm gonna be like, hey, listen, man, I got a daily news show about video games. I'm crazy. You gotta let me out of here. So
I was wearing a onesie too, just to like throw everyone off.
Yeah, really sell it home, of course, naturally.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you can make it. I appreciate it. I suppose we could probably get into things, but before we do, let's talk about what we do here on this show. Most weekdays, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. Hello, Twitch. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Square Enix has announced a playable NFT collectible art experience. Okay, let's go ahead and just take a look at this thing while we talk about it. This comes from Chris Scullion at VGC. Square Enix has announced a new franchise built around NFTs. It's called Symbiogenesis, which of course we talked about last week, with the possibility that, you know, it could be a Parasite Eve game because Symbiogenesis is a thing that's referenced in those games. And Square Enix made those games. And maybe we're overdue for a Parasite Eve.
Sure.
They decided we were overdue to spend a lot of money on worthless digital art things. Symbiogenesis is described by the company as its first digital collectible art project designed from the ground up for Web3 fans.
So Seth Green.
Yes, Seth Green, and there's probably a list of Web3 weirdos. If you would describe yourself as a Web3 fan, I'm just going to have a blanket sort of don't ever talk to me on. Like, just... That's a weird thing.
Physical blanket. Just put it over someone's like, stop.
Yeah, just going to push you away, maybe down a hill. According to Square Enix, Symbiogenesis is set in a self-contained world where a wide cast of characters, symbiosis, all of which can be collected as digital art. It promises to offer an interactive story and a dedicated community. The art collected by players, and that's art in quotes, by players, can be used as a character in a story that takes place in an alternate world where the player can untangle a mystery by completing missions that revolve around questions of the monopolization and distribution of resources. Why are they doing this, Jan?
There has to be... I understand the disconnect between... businesses that are heavily based in two different countries, but someone has to go over to wherever this decision is being made, whether it's in Japan, whether it's in Europe, whether it's here in America, and tell them to stop. Just put the tarp over them.
Just cut it out.
Just throw them in the freight elevator. Put it all the way to the basement. because this is a dumb basement idea. Just stop.
I hate your dumb basement idea. It is. Someone in chat said, "Oh yeah, it's like a gacha game. Just they're using NFTs instead of all of the other gacha mechanics that already work and have no issue." Who know? I don't know if they've said what blockchain they're operating on. Maybe it's one of those ones that are a little bit less energy intensive than the old blockchains, Ethereum and some other ones. And I guess Ethereum's updated. I haven't kept up with it. My issues with NFTs was rarely to do with the environment. The environment feels like it's going to get destroyed by a million other things, as well as NFTs. I've sort of been nihilistic about that, and I apologize, but that's where I'm at with that stuff. My issues have always been that this just feels like a really stupid idea that is the only people in weird boardrooms that are trying to find out better ways to exploit people and to ruin games while exploiting them are going for. And so here we are, Square Enix, continuing to go down this path, even though it felt multiple times since the beginning of this year, since the height of everyone was talking about NFTs every single day, that we've hit multiple points where it's like, well, that's over. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And then here comes Square Enix strolling into the room, just like, hey, you guys like symbiogenicizing? Well, guess what? We're going to give you a mobile NFT art project game that enables you to do that. And we're going to make it about the distribution of resources, as if that's not like just a really wild thing to make a game about NFTs about. Fundamentally, NFTs are about bringing a way of destroying the democratization that the internet brings, where it's like, hey, everyone can just copy this thing. Everyone can have a copy of Shakespeare. Like, you could just have it. You could download it, and it's like kilobytes big, and you should have access to all of the world's knowledge and all of the world's creations and art. And NFTs are like, well, what if we found a way to take away the magic of the internet and place the lack of, or the dearth of availability from the real world and applied that to the internet? Wouldn't that be magical? It's like, no, that's a fucking nightmare. And that's what the game is also about. Like, what? I just really despise everything that's happening here. Of course, like we said, symbiogenesis is something that we thought might be referencing Parasite Eve. Boy, were we fools. Absolute fools.
Absolute. We got put in the basement, Grubb. That's what happened.
Absolutely. I despise it down here.
I feel like Square has so many IP, not including all the ones that they had just previously sold this year, or gotten rid of. So much IP, and I hate to say it this way, and excuse my phrasing, so much IP that they can exploit their fan base and get money the good old regular way of exploitation, rather than
we ask them to exploit us by making the thing we want them to make. Like, just do that,
dude. Like honestly, they have. I know Marvel Snap just came out, right? But you can make a mobile game that has all of the Final Fantasy boys, girls, rabbit ladies, and then sprinkle in some other like Squaresoft stuff people, like, oh, there's a Dragon Quest guy, there's a slime, and just instead of being bare bones with the monetization, monetize the crap out of it.
Yeah,
people will buy it.
We're over complaining about that. Like, at this point, do the gacha games, do the copy Clash Royale with Kingdom Hearts or whatever. Like, do all that stuff. We're kind of like over it. So we're basically saying, yeah, if that's how you want to go make your money to fund the other cool stuff, cool. And their answer to that is, well, that's not enough money. We want to have this sort of pyramid scheme where we can put out a piece of art in a game, someone buys it, and they sell it, and we get a cut, and they sell it, and we get a cut, and they sell it, and we get a cut. And it's just, it doesn't feel like the future in the way that they feel it is. It also feels like this is a waste of time, because it's really probably not going to go anywhere. Web3 stuff has just been completely tainted by scams. I think one of the biggest companies that have that's popped up in this space in the last couple of months is one that is, hey, it's an alert system that tells you if the new thing you just signed up for is actually a scam. What? Like, how does that not just drive people away in droves? And of course it has. It has driven away most people. There are some true believers and hustlers out there that are still trying to make it happen. But when the hustler looks around and only sees other hustlers, they're gonna be like, okay, this thing is dead, and they're gonna give up too. And Square Enix is going to be left being like, man, we could have used that time and effort to make a game people actually wanted to play instead of whatever this is. This is a company that just last week was talking about how they have to make globally appealing games. and it's sort of magnificent that they turn around and the next game they announce is something that has almost anti-global appeal. It's like appeals to no one. You'll never meet a person that was like asking for this game. That will never happen, except for on Twitter where they'll find you and they're probably a bot. So good luck, Square Enix. What do you think is going to happen next with Square Enix? We talk about this every time they come up, but Final Fantasy 14 doing fine. We expect big things from Final Fantasy 16. And then everything below that, I guess not everything. There are some, like, we like the Diofield Chronicles well enough, right?
Yeah.
And Tactics Ogre's coming. There's promising things there. It just feels like a weird company still, right?
I get worried because, it's these bigger tentpole games that I feel like Square is able to hold on to, like Final Fantasy 14, upcoming Final Fantasy 16, and then sporadically the smaller releases or remasters of stuff. But then I get worried that they're fumbling the bag too much with all these other business ventures. And we've seen other game publishers and developers pedal back. Like Ubisoft is, as far as I know, they're not doing all their NFT stuff anymore. And it just feels like Square is just putting a bunch of self errors across the field. They're putting the rakes down and stepping on them purposely, whether they want to or not. It just seems like I don't get it. I do not get it, because there has to be some type of strategist in that HQ somewhere in this company that can clearly see that this is not the move, if not for like a PR thing of the overall vibe of the company. Because I don't know how much NFTs would annoy the Final Fantasy 14 audience, but then like that is a very large and dedicated audience. But as soon as like, what if they try to introduce NFTs into that game? Will that suddenly push all those people away, and all those people will just jump to, I don't know, Lost Ark, if Lost Ark is still a thing, and if it can still run on a computer.
Yep.
And I don't know. It just seems like there isn't a clear vision across the board.
Yeah, it seems like they are they're grasping at what aren't even straws, and the frustrating thing is that we see things that they could be doing, other IPs that they could work with, like you said earlier, and we're like kind of begging them a little bit to go back and work with some of that stuff, and they've done some of those things, but there's a lot left over, and Parasite Eve just being one of them. Maybe there's reasons they don't work with that, but there's a lot of other options. Like, why not do cool things with those IPs before going off in these other directions that don't seem very promising? And who knows? Maybe they'll prove us all wrong and make $2 billion with this game. I just really can't see it right now. It seems like a failure waiting to happen.
With like how, I mean, cryptocurrency is already volatile. It's especially volatile right now. Yep. I don't care that people are like happy that Dogecoin is going up. That shit's gonna fall and explode in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, and
I'm calling it.
New cryptocurrencies get introduced all the time, and I wish if someone knows how to do this to teach me. Most of them fail, so why wouldn't you short all of them? Like with short sell, where it's like you promise to buy it back later sell it back later at that price, the high price, but you buy it at the low price. And it's like, well, most of them are going to fail, so why not just do that with every single cryptocurrency that comes along? And I feel like that's the way I'm thinking about your new investment like product. There's something significantly wrong overall. Let's see. Yeah, I'm like, that's what propaganda fan. That's what I like. Is there a way to short them? Yeah, most of them do that already. It's called a rug pull. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's like that's the thing. The rug pull. That is exactly the service I was talking about. It's like rug alert, like rug pull alert. And they're like, okay, so yeah, that's incredible. That's actually the way that most of these companies are making money is by shorting the own things that they're making. Ooh, okay, wow.
There's an interesting thought that I just saw in the Twitch chat from A Dawn Stands Alone, and they said they're definitely trying to get sold to Sony by devaluing everything else while not de-evaluating Final Fantasy in the process.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they want to be sold for a high price, though. So, I mean, they also want to be streamlined. So that's why they sold off the things that were not, that didn't have high profit margins, which was true of their Western games. I mean, I don't know. I think they definitely want to be sold. I think the reason that we hear about them talking about we are going to take investments into our studios to help fund games going forward, and we're going to take that from anyone who comes along. To me, they do that because Sony has said, actually, we can't afford you right now, or something along those lines. But who knows? We'll see. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is possibly coming to Steam. Obviously, this is a story of Ubisoft and like where they're going to put their games out. But real quick, a new product entry is added in the Ubisoft Connect's database for a Steam version of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Ubisoft does this for games that it sells on Steam that still require the Ubisoft Connect application to launch. This would mark a significant return of Ubisoft coming back to Steam with one of its biggest games, which it has tried to avoid using recently to avoid the 30% service fee that Valve charges, obviously. Now, that fee does come down if you sell $100 million worth of games on the service, but that wasn't enough for a lot of companies. Ubisoft, well, Bethesda, but many have started, after that wave of companies going off doing their own launchers, many have started returning, and this might be marking the return of Ubisoft in earnest, although Assassin's Creed Valhalla, of course, a years old game at this point. Who knows if they're going to end up doing this with their day one games? Jen, I wonder, do you have like a feeling about if a game comes to Steam versus a game comes to another platform, and how you feel about are you more likely to purchase it if it comes to Steam? Because I found myself being that way because of the Steam Deck, and I wonder if that's changed things for these companies as well.
Yeah, 100% that's changed my buying habits for games. Like even when a developer will offer a code for a game, I'll prefer. Before, I'd used to just get a console version, whether it's Switch, PS5, etc. But now more so because I can spend more time because of the Steam Deck.
Mm-hmm.
I'll choose Steam, and also when it comes to purchasing games too. That's why I need someone to show me how to get Xbox PC Game Pass on my Steam Deck and the Epic Game Store.
Yeah, maybe I
got Final Fantasy 14, and I haven't been putting time into that because of freaking Marvel Snap and Vampire Survivors. Grubb, last night I was dual wielding both.
Ooh. Oh, I love that. Oh my God, that sounds like a hell of a night. Oh man, that's the dream right there. Boy, that sounds good. Those are two games that can just make time disappear, like Jess was saying on the Bombcast. Eat it up. I am. Hey, we should do a messy stream where we go back into the Steam Deck and just get all these things set up.
I think that'd be valuable, actually. Yeah.
Well, and we can, we can either cut it up into pieces and put it out as a video, like, oh, here's how you do it, or then after we figure it out, we could just record an actual like how to, and that could be fun. But yeah, I'm like right there with you, where it's if I can play it on the Steam Deck, that really helps me, and I kind of want to maintain that. But at the same time, I get these companies trying to maximize out their revenue, and Epic was a good way, only charging 12%. But obviously, these games sell way better on Steam, just period. So that was probably going to that's eventually that if they couldn't get the numbers up high enough, the difference in the cut doesn't matter all that much, and that seems to be the case with Ubisoft. I do think they will probably. The next Assassin's Creed game will probably launch on Steam on day one. I think that would be my bet at this point.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Microsoft is raising the price of the Xbox Series X in India. Okay, just in India. This is the third price hike this year in India. I just want to kind of point this out and probably try to and find out what their motivation behind this, and if it could affect the price elsewhere. Console sales in India are very, very tiny. That's a country of 1.5 billion people or 1 billion people, and they sell about 100,000 consoles in total since the beginning of this generation. It's just not a console-heavy audience. They're playing on phones and they're playing on PC. But because of the price of the dollar the value of the dollar, the Microsoft has raised the price of the Xbox Series S and X up 12% since launch. They're at 55,990 rupees and 35,990 rupees since launch, and that's what they sell for now. And then that's up 12%. And this is kind of putting them in a position where the Xbox Series S, for example, doesn't look like the value console, because it is only 10% less than the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition, which is 39,990 rupees. But it seems like both these companies are like, hey, we're not trying to fight it out really in India right now, because the audience there just has not really shown a lot of concern about getting into consoles. So it feels like that is the balance that both these companies are weighing. Like, okay, we have a fight between PlayStation and Xbox, and we need to be positioning ourselves as best as possible between the two. But also there is the currency exchange and the value of the dollar going up so high makes something like, oh, if we try to exchange that from rupees into dollars, so it's kind of not worth it anymore. So do we want to be fighting PlayStation, or do we want to be able to justify just our bottom line, what we're earning in a country? And it seems like in India, Microsoft's made the decision to say, we're not worried about what PlayStation's doing, even though the PlayStation's way outselling the Xbox in that country. It seems like, well, the numbers there, regardless of that, don't justify an all-out fight or investing in marketing or whatever along those lines. Instead, we just need to be worried about what we do there needs to just justify itself on its own terms. So I would expect this not to carry over into a lot of other places, but it does fly in the face of Microsoft saying, hey, we're not going to be raising prices this year. Well, they're obviously talking to us and not talking to a country like India. Do you think that a price increase here is indicative of the potential of a price increase for hardware in other places, or is this just about the volatility of the dollar?
I think I think this may just be Microsoft. I mean, they're going to do both, regardless of what the outcome is or the business motivations are. They're totally doing this to increase the bottom line in India. But then, Phil Spencer's already talked about, like, yeah, we're going to raise prices eventually. And I think this is them just trying to recoup whatever costs that they can in a market where they're not doing so hot already.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they are assessing things constantly, is what kind of the way Spencer made it sound. Like, hey, yeah, we're going to react to the markets and what we need to do. Yeah. And if things change on the ground, they're not going to keep this price, the hardware price. Obviously, the price of games, the price of Game Pass feels like it could fluctuate all the time. Who knows? The price increase could come for those things at any moment. For the hardware, that one's a more difficult one to get away with. But they're definitely not promising that they're not going to raise the price. They've said as much. Phil Spencer on stage said as much. And it feels like if market forces change enough, that those price increases could still happen. For now, though, it seems like most places are avoiding it. Unlike with the PlayStation, where it's like everywhere except the United States avoided it. Let's see here. The Witcher 4's game director has been revealed. In a tweet published on Thursday morning, CD Projekt Red's Sebastian Kalimba said he's been appointed to direct the new Witcher saga, which was recently confirmed to be a trilogy of games. Sebastian tweeted, "Career news, I'm directing the new Witcher saga. Since joining CD Projekt Red, I believe nothing is impossible, and raising the bar, telling emotional stories, and creating worlds is what we're here for." He joined, according to his LinkedIn, he joined the Polish studio in October 2014. He initially served as lead animator for The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077 before being promoted to head of animation. And then he was moved up to creative director, and now he's actually just directing the games wholesale. Not too much to the story other than they continue to put pieces in place to say, hey, we are in a good place with our games going forward, and we are a valuable developer. And this comes on the heels of them announcing a whole slate of projects. They said Cyberpunk 2077 sequel's coming, that new trilogy of Witcher games is coming, Witcher spinoffs, and a new original IP. And it feels like, yeah, we are like, we're putting Cyberpunk 2077's launch in the rearview mirror. We've left it behind. We have a bright future ahead of us in case you wanted to buy us, right? It still feels like all of these things are part of that. I mean, obviously this game needed a director, but it's like, hey, coming out and just being able to announce it and say the game's in a strong place after making these announcements, it feels like, okay, they are anchoring these things in such a way that they can pitch this if anyone does come along and expresses interest, which rumors are that a lot of companies have expressed interest in buying CD Projekt Red, and of course they have, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even despite the disastrous launch of Cyberpunk, the Witcher series alone, I feel like, is an incredibly tantalizing IP for a publisher to want to swoop up, especially with how CD Projekt Red has kind of salvaged Cyberpunk, and now there's all this positive buzz around it. I'm curious about trying it out. I know Patrick Klepek is now doing a long play of it. Marathon stream of that. And also, like, the show has done really well for the general vibe of Cyberpunk. So there's that renewed interest in it, and all the pervs out there are mad that Henry Cavill is no longer the Witcher man. But God, I can't. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm excited about the prospect of all these new projects. I think I'm hesitant though, based off of the track record of the launches of all of these games.
Yeah, and it is a show of strength that I think reveals an underlying weakness. I mean, and that's maybe a bit harsh, and I don't mean it to be harsh. I just mean like the reality is that making games is very difficult. CD Projekt Red has been publishing their own and developing their own, and but they don't have sort of someone behind them saying, "Listen, if you really do need more time, it is okay." When they had to push out Cyberpunk 2077 when they did, because it's like they were looking at the numbers, we can't justify putting this off any longer. We've got to start bringing in money for this game that we've been developing for 10 years that hasn't made any money yet. So it was, and that's a risk that every sort of studio in CDPR's position would be in. And one way to avoid that is to get a big company behind you and to own you, and and then you also get that big payday of selling the company, and then you probably could still be involved in they have investors. Like, this is a company that is publicly traded, and so it's like they have to answer to investors as well. So it's not like just they're worried about their own pockets. Every quarter they have to explain what they're doing and how they're growing, and I don't feel like you don't kind of come out and make all these promises and say Witcher 4's got a new director, we're in a good place, all these games are coming along, unless you want to make something happen immediately, because these are things you could spread out and show a slow, steady growth, and that is maybe more beneficial if you are a publicly traded company. That doesn't seem like that's their plan, though, and I kind of don't blame them because of the volatility of the space. It is a very hard position to be in, because Cyberpunk 2077s do happen, and they can happen. And like when they go bad, they go real bad. You said disastrous launch, and I'm like, is disastrous fair? Yeah, of course it is. I thought like, oh my god, that's the game that got delisted from PlayStation, and they Jim Ryan was basically like, just fuck those guys. We're not going to sell that game. They threw us under the bus when they tried to do the just go talk to Sony about getting your money back. It's like, we don't do that. And it's, oh man, that one, it was like national news. It was on nightly news channels. I'm like, yeah. When it goes bad, it can go real bad, and that's got to be a little bit traumatizing if you were, okay, we got to answer to this vague public that has high expectations for our games, answer to investors. I'm kind of sick of answering to anybody. I just want to go make games, and I can do that if a Tencent or a PlayStation or a Microsoft comes along and acquires us and gives us a huge bag, and then on top of that gives us financial backing to make the games we want to make as we want to make them. So who knows if that ends up happening, but... Right. Well, will CDPR be embraced? Asks Dizzy Hippos.
Oh, I hope not. I was thinking, Sony feels like the right move, but then I forgot. But then I forgot about how they kind of threw Sony under the bus, and then Sony threw them under the bus as well. But then they're both under the bus, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like, it's kind of thing where like Vince McMahon would always get in beefs with people, and people would leave the company on bad terms, and then 5 years later they'd be back, and like, because money works, everyone's all about business. So I think it could be the same thing here. It's like, you know what? Yeah, we were mad at each other, but this is good for business, and what's good for business can sort of pave over any issues we've had in the past. So I think that's possible.
I feel like they'd be a good fit underneath the Sony umbrella in a similar way that, like, I didn't think about it how you put it, Grubb, of, they need someone at the top to tell them to slow down or just take your time.
Give them permission to slow down,
give them permission.
The investors won't do that, won't ever do that.
No, not at all. And then because Sony has acquired a studio like Housemarque, and Housemarque can now, slow down, take time when they need to. And that is definitely something that I think CD Projekt Red needs at the tippy top. And Sony and CD Projekt Red are both Jeff Jarrett in this analogy.
it's Jeff Jarrett's all the way down. Turns out every game developer and publisher, Jeff Jarrett. It's been that way all along. Where they're secretly they're country music stars who have to secretly wrestle because it's just in their hearts. All right, let's move along here to Google Play for PC rolls out in 7 new territories, including the U.S. This comes from Daniel Pardis at GamesIndustry.biz. It also comes from Matthew Rory in our Discord, where he posted this. I'm like, oh yeah, look at this thing. So I downloaded it. Let's go over what it is, and we'll talk about it. Google has brought its Google Play for PC service to 7 more countries this week. The rollout sees the program, which allows users to play games listed on the Google Play Store via a desktop computer. It is now in open beta in the U.S., Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Singapore. I installed it. it doesn't have a search function, and I'm like, why does it have a search function? Let me just like search for Call of Duty Mobile. Oh, it only has about 100, maybe 100 games, maybe not even, maybe just a couple dozen games. So it's like clearly like they have to get either sign off or maybe only some games actually support it. I did see Genshin Impact on there, which is weird because you could just play that on a PC natively.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't have a ton of options. So I'm like, I don't know how useful this is actually going to be, because my idea was we want to maybe occasionally play mobile only games for work or something. Maybe every once in a while. It'd be fun to like, the new Call of Duty mobile update. Maybe there's something worth looking into there. And like, yeah, I can capture my phone, and that's possible. We can do that. But it's like, if it just runs on my PC, it makes it a little bit easier. And that is not a solution for that. This is not actually going to be able to get the latest mobile games as they hit and all their updates. It's going to be a handful of selected titles. And maybe that's going to expand over time. Maybe after it's not a beta, that'll change. I don't think there's any word on that for sure, though. It seems like the kind of thing where there's probably licensing issues involved, and at the same time, like this is just one way of doing this. You can, of course, emulate Android on PC, but also I think Windows is planning to add Android apps to the Microsoft Store here pretty soon. Ooh. So that could be another solution, and maybe that'll have more games, or maybe it'll have fewer. Who knows? We'll see. But it's like, do you have any interest in something like this, Jan?
A lot of the mobile games that I'm super hardcore playing right now are also available on PC. Marvel Snap is there, Genshin Impact. But I could definitely see a space where folks want to check out whatever mobile games that are available on the PC on their PCs. This would definitely benefit people like us in the industry that trying to capture phone games. Because I know a fear that is constantly going on is midway through capturing a phone, someone will text you or call you, or you'll put up your burner phone, and then all your burner DMs will pop up and everything. I don't know. I it's cool. I'm just waiting for Google to stop supporting this in like 2 years.
Right. And then, this is the thing where like they just closed down Stadia and now launching this. It's like, oh boy. Clearly you're just like, roll one dice, snake eyes. I guess let's roll the next one with Google Play Games on PC. Yeah, I agree on that. We'll probably shut it down in a couple years.
Yeah.
All right. God of War Ragnarok's PS5, PS4 Pro, and PS4 graphics modes have been confirmed. We talked a little bit about this before, but now we have a nice infographic, which, here, I got a new transition. Let's see if this one works. Ho, 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 the holidays. All right. God of War Ragnarok graphics modes. Let's just go over these real quick. For the PS5, you have two columns here, and it seems like the overarching themes for these columns, in one column, it's favor performance. In the other column, it's favor quality. So under favor performance, you can do just the standard performance. That'll get you 1440p to 2160p with a target of 60 frames per second. So dynamic resolution, 60 frames per second. You can also get unlocked 60 frames per second, which is going to be like trying to go the highest possible all the time while locking to 1440p. That's their favor performance plus high frame rate. Then there is, I zoomed in there, favor performance plus high frame rate plus VRR, which is variable refresh rate. And that's 1440p, unlocked 60 frames per second. But if you have an HDMI 2.1 television and the cable, and that's connected to your PlayStation 5, it'll also do what is essentially, G-Sync or FreeSync, and try to make sure that the frames don't look jittery and don't have any, what is that, frame cutting? I'm forgetting what it's actually called. But yeah, VRR typically looks very good. Then on the favor quality side, you get 2160p native locked, but the target is 30 frames per second. That's a target of 30 frames per second. So it's not, maybe it'll be like under 30 frames per second a lot of times, which makes sense for a full native 2160p. Then the high frame rate version of favored quality is a target of 40 frames per second and a dynamic resolution between 1800 and 2160p. And I like that. That's like a cool mode. Like I've been playing a lot of 40 frames per second on the Steam Deck, Jan, and that's been a good option. It's like, and it looks pretty close to 60, which is surprising. Like only, I guess it's 1/3 more frames per second than 30 frames per second. And that makes a big difference. And then the final one here is basically the same thing, but with the VRR on the favorite quality mode. I'll say this. I think that this is overkill, but in a good way. This because what it says is, listen, if you have a weird desire to have the game look a very specific way, we got you covered, and you don't have to worry about regrets regarding the visual fidelity of the game or the frame rate of the game. We have options for you if you're ready to come in here. It's probably going to just set to one of these modes. It's probably going to be like, the 2160, 30. It's probably going to favor quality when you first boot it up if you don't have something set at the system level. And if you don't want to think about it, you could just go play it and you'll never have to think about it. But if you do, we have you covered, and it just like alleviates some anxieties I think some people have begun to have about performance and visual quality, especially in the wake of some games running at 30 frames per second only on console.
Mm-hmm.
So what were you going to say? Sorry, go ahead.
This is kind of completely unrelated to anything. Do you think there will ever be a time where folks look fondly back at 30 FPS games and think of it as like, oh, those were the good old times? Remember those times? There's too many frames with 60. I hope that isn't the case, because I know that they're like, I'm a film nerd. You also like films. And the 24 is the way to go with there.
Oh, yes.
Unlike you're doing Peter Jackson and The Hobbit, or
48 frames per second. Which is disgusting.
Or Will Smith's, which one was it? Gemini Man?
Gemini Man,
120?
yeah. Did that go up to 120? It was like 120, wasn't it? It was like a really high frame rate, yeah. Listen, I'm like curious to see those. I never got to see Gemini Man in high frame rate. Can you watch Gemini Man in a high frame rate at home?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can, but I'm glad that we are, at least for consoles, slowly moving away from 30, at least on the PS5.
I think there will be people who talk like, I wish that like the cinematics, the videos between the gameplay, those should run at 24 or 30. That looks more filmic. It looks more cinematic.
Sure.
But I think during gameplay, most people are going to be fine if it defaults to 60 every time going forward. It just does feel better. It just actually moving a character around on 3, at least for like open world 3D spaces or just 3D spaces, moving a character through there, having that fidelity, the visual fidelity of as I hit the stick, I could see the animation of them moving in that direction very quickly. It feels snappy. That's pretty important for making a game feel good. And I talk about all the Pepsi challenge, that immediate feeling of, oh, this is good. Everything after that doesn't matter as much as long as it immediately feels good. I can tell you one thing. I had to get a game set up for a show we're going to be doing. And, and it has maybe the worst immediate control feel I've ever experienced.
Oh, no.
Ever.
You chose to do this, though.
I feel like I didn't choose it, and I've just ended up here. At some point, sometimes in life, you feel that way.
Oh, 100%, 5,000% actually. I think it does seem like overkill with a lot of options. I don't know if I should feel bad, but I guess I do feel bad for other studios, specifically the Gotham Knights studios, that were not and maybe are not able to push the console versions to reach this, because God of War Ragnarok is going to have a lot of money. They're going to have a lot of backing, a lot of support to get their games to look the way they want. However, Gotham Knights seemed like it was just lambasted by a bunch of different decisions that they were not able to make the game that they wanted to.
Yes.
In any aspect of making a game, that it seems unfortunate that this just isn't the standard across the board for consoles. And it'd be great if it was.
But it's a far away from being the standard. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, that's not just true for graphics modes, accessibility options. God of War Ragnarok's going to have a long laundry list of accessibility options that's going to show you immediately as you start up that game. That stuff all costs money and institutional knowledge, which requires a ton of investment. And a lot of studios do not have that, and be like, well, they're making choices not to invest in that, and they definitely are. But when you look at something like Gotham Knights, you could see it's like they were really hamstrung, and they made the only choices available to them, which is basically piece together a game they can kind of sell, so they can all justify what they've been doing for the last several years. Cliff Bleszinski thinks Epic ran out of ideas for Gears of War before selling it to Xbox. Bleszinski served as lead designer on the first 3 games in the series during a 20-year spell at Epic that came to an end in 2012, a year after Gears of War 3's release, and 2 years before Microsoft acquired the IP. According to Xbox, Gears of War has sold over 22 million units and grossed over $1 billion when the deal was announced in 2014. Despite the franchise's success, Blazinski told IGN he thinks Epic had run out of ideas for where to take Gears next following the departure of several key staff. I honestly think once Lee Perry, who was the gameplay designer on Gears of War 2, myself, and Rod Ferguson, producer of Gears of War, left, I believe that Epic didn't really know what to do with the franchise. They hadn't shipped a game in a while. The Unreal Engine was doing rather well, but they were growing and they probably needed the income, even though they really didn't know what to do with the future of the franchise. Since its acquisition, Microsoft has released Gears 4 and 5, as well as what was the turn-based one called? Gears Tactics. Yeah, it's in the name. I feel like this feels right, where that franchise had reached a sort of natural conclusion in terms of like where you could take a cover-based shooter and you could do stuff with the story and the characters, and that's kind of what Microsoft and the Coalition have done with the franchise with 4 and 5, which is it's still Gears, and they've done some new stuff with the story, with the characters, and the new ideas have been like, okay, we're going to offer a slightly more open world, and it feels like that DLC for Gears 5, which I can't remember the name of, Chad, if people want to shout it out. That's where I think they've begun like striking like, okay, we can figure out maybe a new pacing, a new way of structuring this game a little bit. It's still going to be Gears, but we're going to start experimenting a little bit to try to find out what's next. And even while that may have worked, they've taken a break. They've decided to take a break from Gears right now, a pretty hardcore break where they are working on, the Coalition that is working on a lot of other games for Microsoft, as well as making a new side game that's a little bit smaller off to the side while they get used to Unreal Engine 5. And that means, a Gear 6 is probably still a ways off. And so they've taken a break, and that feels like, the franchise needs time to breathe. It needs new ideas, and there's no obvious next step for it, right?
Yeah. I think about the Gears of War's contemporaries of the time, like when Gears of War was super hot. You look at a Halo and then look at a Halo Infinite now. It's kind of petered out. Mm-hmm. Just like a lot of Gears of War stuff has also petered out. And like the third-person shooter genre in its entirety. I mean, like Outriders is maybe one of like the last big. I say big and like super hesitantly.
Yeah.
But there's only so many ideas you can go before something, comes to a natural conclusion. Unless you are Call of Duty and you just remake the really good one, and then folks turns out really like the really good one when that comes out. It feels like a jab at Epic that is warranted, but also it's like, no one asked for this, man. No one asked for this specific idea. Epic doesn't care about what you think right now, dog.
Yeah, I wrote Jojo Dancer and Propaganda Panda, a few others in chat mentioned Hive Busters is the name of the DLC I was looking for. A lot of people really like Hive Busters. I should actually just try that. I've always had trouble getting into Gears, but people said Hive Busters is kind of the best it's ever been, so I'll check that out. We'll see. They will get a chance to come back to Gears, and maybe just time will make the heart grow fonder and all that. They'll have a chance to just kind of go back to the basics, or they will have new ideas. I think one of the big hamstringing things for them over the last console generation was the Xbox One was not very powerful, especially on the CPU. So if you wanted to try a bunch of new ideas, maybe new enemy types, like smart enemies, like there just weren't a lot of options for getting those CPUs to simulate AI in ways that would have been very interesting. Maybe that stuff is opened up to them, and while they experiment with Unreal Engine's graphics capabilities, and that'll have, of course, Gears will be a showcase for that. Maybe at the same time, they can begin experimenting with ways of using these new, more powerful CPUs to do new kinds of enemies and new encounters and new simulations, and that could be cool as well.
Here's my idea. Instead of big, beefy men and where you have to run super slow, just have it be a bunch of skinny, emo people.
Hell yes. Just the opposite end of the spectrum. That is a new idea for Gears of War. Absolutely.
There you go. There you go, Epic. There you go, Cliff. Write the check.
I mean, honestly, it should just be Isekai. Okay, My Chemical Romance gets ported into the Gears of War world, and they've got to fight their way out. And they do the soundtrack.
Oh my God!
You're welcome.
Boom.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Oh, and then just call the game the Black Parade.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. God, we nailed it.
Alex Boniello, can you make this into a musical, please?
Yes, please. It's a multimedia extravaganza.
Cut the check.
It starts here on Giant Bomb.
Tony. I'll be there at the Tony's acceptance.
Executive
speech.
producer Jan Ochoa here to accept the Tony. Absolutely. HBO confirms The Last of Us TV show will premiere in January. January 15th on HBO. It'll also be in the UK on Sky on January 16th. So those are the details. Jan, one of my favorite dad shows is, I've talked about this before, where it's one that like centers me, even though it's terrible, is Chernobyl from Craig Mazin, the writer and creator of this show. I've watched that like 2.5 times. I honestly feel like I could go back at any time and watch it again. And so I'm like, oh, I want to see the next thing from that guy. And I'm like not super excited about the Last of Us TV show, but I might just watch it to see how my buddy Craig is doing making new TV shows. Where are you at with the Last of Us TV show?
I think I'm in the same exact boat. I really, 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 really like Pedro Pascal. Pretty much in everything he does.
Yes, he's a good boy.
He occupies that same space that Oscar Isaacs does, where it's
absolutely.
Like, man,
have you seen them do interviews together too? They're so good. They start speaking like Spanish to each other in the middle of like English interviews, and they're just oh my god, these sweet boys.
It's just like wow, like you're too handsome, you're good actors. But unfortunately, with the Last of Us franchise, I feel like I don't want to say oversaturated, but man, Last of Us Part 2 left me really worse for wear. It just made me feel really hollow on the inside in a good way. And I don't think I really needed The Last of Us Part 1, the remaster that came out earlier this year. And it's just such an oppressive world. I don't think I need to go to it. But because of the production team behind it, and it doesn't seem like, no offense to any of the other streaming services, but I don't really remember much from the Halo TV series that came out earlier this year on Paramount. But because this does have like the Chernobyl dude working on it, and it got that HBO money, whatever that means now, I feel like they're going to do well.
Yeah.
And even though I probably know what's going to happen, I'm still probably going to be excited. I guess this is what the Game of Thrones freaks feel like with House of the Dragons. Like, I know what's going to happen because I read this book. And I guess like, I know what's going to happen because I played the games. But let's see anyway.
Yeah. And it's, obviously there's still value in adapting things that like we've seen in other mediums. So you can bring other things out of the character. And, I mean, to me, it makes you more connected to the story if you actually know the story already. Because you're like, oh man, they're setting up that big moment I know is going to happen. Oh my God. And that feels really good as someone who's watching or listening or reading a story. Mm-hmm. But I think, WB in a weird, Discovery in a weird place, the parent company of HBO, they've begun sort of deprecating some of the services and undercutting stuff like HBO. But this show started in a world where HBO Go and HBO Max, or HBO Max not Go, but was going to be the biggest thing in the world, and they were investing in it in that way. So feels like that this show should have all the hallmarks of a prestige HBO show made by 100%. One of the best people at making TV right now, and then based on property that it should really serve well as a prestige TV show as well. So I think it's gonna do very well. I also think that Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 are going to see a massive sales spike because of it. I think I really think this is going to be the one where it really works. The Uncharted movie didn't work very well. I think this is going to work for them.
My partner, for instance, doesn't play video games, but she is acquainted with the story of The Last of Us because she's heard it's so good. And she's very excited for this because, she sees the track record of everyone involved in the show. And it's almost one of those things of, it's kind of too big to fail, because even the girl that's playing Ellie is from Game of Thrones, and I remember her being one of the more favorable characters near the tail end of that show. The Astro Creep in the Twitch chat brings up, also, why are we doing live action shows for games when animated shows can do so much more? I think it's still tied to folks having a weird thing against animation versus live action.
Right, and what audience you're trying to reach. I mean, obviously that didn't hurt the cyberpunk audience, but I think the cyberpunk audience is predisposed for anime, right?
Yeah.
And the Witcher audience that you were trying to sell those games to, obviously I think they did do a Witcher animated show as well, but the show that really got people going was the one that was more like Game of Thrones. The one that seemed a little bit more like Game of Thrones found that audience, and they went and bought the games. And that's what they're trying to create. They're trying to create that pipeline. And live action just serves that purpose better, I think. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Let's do the Japanese physical charts for the week 43 of the year from October 24th through October 30th. Number one, still on the software sales chart, is Splatoon 3, which has reached a new total of 3,235,000 units. That's 51,000 on top there added to that total. So very well done. Then number two, Bayonetta 3, 41,285 units. Not the biggest number. And you do a 50-50 split for digital. That's 82,000, which seems probably about right for that game. Still, it feels like, man, is Bayonetta 3 not doing what they needed to do? And maybe it's just not doing it in Japan. We'll see. But so then Star Ocean: The Divine Force for PS4 got 27,000 units. And then Call of Duty debuted on the chart as well. I'm going to combine those. So Call of Duty was actually 42,000 units. And Star Ocean: The Divine Force, if you combine it with the PS4 and PS5 version, it's 44,000 was actually the number one selling game of the week. And then others were like Ace Angler, Aquarium, Needy, Streamer, Overload. I don't know any of those games, but those are the new games that were 4, 5, and 6 on the chart.
Hell yeah.
Console sales. Here's an interesting one. PlayStation 5 has outsold the Switch for, I think, the first time in Japan since launch. It did 38,866 total sales across the digital and base version. And then the Switch did 38,634. So just like 200 fewer consoles sold. That is a sign that I think Sony's figuring out the supply chain. And of course they are. They timed it with the price increase very it was planned the whole time. It's like, listen, more consoles are coming. If we're going to do a price increase, we have to do it now. They did it. Yeah. Put out more systems, and those systems are still selling. So it kind of all worked out the way they needed it to. Xbox Series total sales were 3,674, so quite even below the normal for Xbox, and that probably speaks to a lack of supply for that system. But yeah, that's pretty good for Sony. I think obviously something like Star Ocean would help with that in Japan, but it's also, I think it's just supply catching up with the ongoing demand, right?
Yeah. I also wonder, like, what are folks playing on the PS5? Because, we're looking at these charts here, and sure, you can play all of these games on a PS5, but is Star Ocean really that big of a system seller to get people on the PS5?
I think this one sold even worse than the last Star Ocean, so I really don't think so.
Yeah. And then I guess I'm just super it's interesting to see Call of Duty there as well, but I guess Call of Duty Mobile was also doing big in Japan, I believe.
Call of Duty is actually pretty big in Japan. It's obviously it's bigger in other places, but pretty big in Japan.
Got it. And also people are saying brand loyalty. I 100% get it.
Yeah, but I mean, that brand loyalty felt like it was broken last generation a little bit because PlayStation 4 sold pretty slowly in Japan while it did gangbusters everywhere else. It was in Japan. It was like, yeah, they seem to yawn at it a little bit. But I don't know. Who knows if there's like, shifts in the market and people are like, maybe consoles aren't so bad after all. And I don't always have to be on the go, or having stuff at home is nice in a post-pandemic world. I honestly don't know, but I mean, PlayStation is still going to sell in Japan a certain number,
right?
Even though, I mean, listen, yes, the PS5 outsold Switch this month. 38,000 is pretty low compared to a normal Switch month. Even Switch sales just kind of maybe starting to slow down in this country. In the last couple of times we talked about this, Switch was at like 100,000. I think on the Splatoon week it was way more than 100,000. So a big Switch week still decimates a big week for PS5. But we'll see if that changes as supply does continue to get figured out. Which again, I think we are all predicting at this point in the next couple of months, especially after we get over on the other side of the holidays, PlayStation 5s are going to be much more plentiful.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm curious, is the Steam Deck out in Japan yet?
I think it is. Yes, I think it launched in Japan in the last couple of weeks. I think yes. I remember that story where like, hey, you can pre-order it in Japan now. I think we did. We talked about it on the show. I think I can't remember exactly when.
I think we did. Gosh, because I'm interested to see how much. And excuse me for using tech lingo here. How much that will disrupt the market in Japan, if it will. Just because, like, I'm looking at some of these games, other than the first party Nintendo games, you can play a lot of this on the Steam Deck.
Yes.
Like Persona 5 Royal, you've been able to play that on Steam for a while.
PC's been growing in Japan as well, and Steam Deck's probably only going to amplify and speed that up. So, yeah, I think the Steam Deck has done very well in Japan. So, these numbers are just not, you can't compare them to Japan of like 10 years ago. Things have changed so much there, and it's a very mobile focused place, and that's going to change things fundamentally for all time. All right, let's get to the poll from yesterday. Are you going to pre-order PSVR 2 for $550? 89.3% of people said no, and 10.7% of people said yes. I think this is likely a little bit skewed by some other fans coming in and be like, no, that's way too expensive. Yeah, they were never going to buy it anyhow. But still, PSVR, virtual reality overall, does feel like a niche market, right? And that seems to be reflected in the poll.
Yeah, it just doesn't look like the best launch lineup to get folks interested. I saw you tweeting yesterday that Half-Life Alyx has to happen, right?
Yeah, it feels like it has to.
It has to happen, or there has to be some type of social hub, which I feel like they're desperately missing. Because I feel like, for as much as VR chat got bashed in the beginning of its launch, it is like I don't want to say a good social hub, but a social hub for people online that have VR headsets or just want to talk with some homies or talk with some random homies. And I understand because the PlayStation is a console and, there's a lot more families that will have a PS5 over a PC, that Sony's definitely worried about the shenanigans that can ensue, and good and bad shenanigans.
Yeah, and it's a company that could figure that stuff out. They figured it out before. They could probably put some moderation or limit the kind of interactions you can have with people who you don't explicitly say are your friends. But even still, there's a lot of risk there. And people are pointing out this poll that a lot of gamers harbor ill will towards the word pre-order. And that might be skewing the results because people are like, don't ever pre-order anything. I thought we kind of agreed that, pre-ordering games is a sucker's thing. But if you are pre-ordering hardware, that you want, and it's kind of the only way to guarantee you're going to get it. I mean, you don't pre-order this thing, it's probably going to be sold out for at least a little bit of time. Although maybe the PSVR 2 not, because they said they want to produce 2 million of these things, and that's a lot. And I guess we'll have to wait and see if they could sell 2 million in the first quarter. That seems like a tall order based on the games they're showing. Although obviously they're not done. I have a I was going to do a story of this just real quick. The only games, the reason I feel like we have time for this is it's not very long. Here are the confirmed launch games for the PSVR 2. Among Us VR, Horizon Call of the Mountain. And that's it.
When Tam and I checked out Horizon Call of the Mountain, that was very impressive. I think it was a good showcase of that headset.
People seem to really like it as an experience. It's just, it's
you said it there, experience rather than like full on game or other thing besides experience. I worry that it's just something folks will check out, and there may not be like a lot of replay value. Also, okay, if Colonel Sanders pointing out Horizon Call of the Mountain bundles only an extra $50, so it's not going to be a full length game.
Right. Well, I mean, maybe they're gonna. Well, yeah, it's because their full length ones are $70. That's $20 off. That does. I was never expecting a full experience, like a full gaming experience from that game. I was expecting a shorter thing, not necessarily like the Batman VR thing that came with the PlayStation VR at the time. Something a little bit more robust than that, but not that much more than that. It just feels like they're going to take you through a couple of scenes. They'll do some interactions. But it's not going to be some 25-hour video game.
They should have just made that game a tall neck simulator, and you were just like one of the tall necks and just looking down.
Yeah, and it's all just controlled with the headset, with the neck. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Is Ubisoft going to release the next Assassin's Creed on Steam day one? This is the poll for tomorrow, Friday. We'll come back in and discuss this tomorrow. I'm going to send it now. 11 more games were announced yesterday. We talked about that on the show yesterday, but I don't think any of those were confirmed for launch. They haven't, honestly, a big part of that for me is, listen, there's a long list of games confirmed coming to the PSVR 2. Affected the Asylum, After the Fall, Aliens VR, Alvo, Afterlife, Among Us VR. Those are just the A's. So like keep in mind, like that expands now throughout the whole alphabet when you're going alphabetically. There's dozens of games confirmed, actually, about 2-3 dozen games. Just the launch has not been set in any real way that makes you feel like you have to act. Part of that makes me think, oh, we are still due for a PlayStation State of Play right before launch for the VR that actually does talk about what is coming for these things soon. So, all right. Yeah, so we have that new poll. I posted that live. In the meantime, Jan, what do we have happening on the site today and tomorrow?
Today, we've got Dave Lang streaming for Extra Life, full 24 hours. The guy just started maybe an hour or so ago. If you're watching on the Giant Bomb chat page, we should have a video of Lang at the bottom or at the top, concurrently with whatever we are currently streaming. It's Friday night, baby. It's Friday night. Friday Night Forkin' popping off later today. But before that, after this program, got something interesting. And, you know, Dan says it there. Nothing bad can happen.
Nothing bad can happen well, I hope that's true. We're going to go watch Dan play Sonic 06 again. So he hasn't finished it. We need to make him finish Sonic 06. So we're going to go into that. And then we'll be recording some quick looks. And then we have the
voicemail dump truck.
Yes, voicemail dump truck. And then 8 p.m. Eastern, Friday Night Forkin' live on a Thursday night. Show up for the win bag, everybody, please. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Jan, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Thank you, Jeff Grubb. Thank you for letting me hang out with you today.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you all watching at home, hang out in the chat with us, hanging out on Twitch. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.